Hello there, my name's Brandon and I make pictures out of tiny squares. And I'm sorry if I startled you by being a real human person in one of my videos. It's been a while since I've done kind of an in-person intro like this, but I thought it'd be fun for today because I wanted to try making a single piece of pixel art like within the day, and also producing the video within the day too. So I've kind of set up all my stuff and I'm gonna generate this as I go along. And I thought it'd be fun to kind of share a little behind the scenes in a sense. So I'm gonna get started by doing a rough sketch, and I'll set up for that now, but I guess we'll just kind of cut to it with the magic of editing, and here we go. All right, so my idea is to create a mock-up for a top-down survival horror game in a Game Boy kind of style. I've been playing a lot of the Resident Evil games lately, and I want to translate that type of game into a lower fidelity like this. For this mock-up, I want a scene that takes place in an arcade, because it's going to be fun to create a bit of a post-apocalyptic or rundown grimy feel to that kind of location. This rough sketch is a bit scrappier than I normally make. I was mainly kind of verifying the layout that I had in mind, and I'm kind of excited to just get to the pixeling actually. But the takeaways here are that I like the placement of the HUD along the bottom. I think it does a nice job occupying the space where that close wall of the room would be anyway. But I want to find a better way to fit more arcade machines into this space. I think I'll probably just have to work this out in the pixeling phase and see if I can maybe pack in an extra row of machines somewhere. So let's move on to pixeling. Alright, this first batch of time-lapse is going to cover some of the basic framework of the setting. A lot of times I start by making a character sprite, but for this one I'm going to get all the walls and arcade machines into place first, and then we can just scale a character to that later. As I mentioned, this is going to be a Game Boy inspired look, so I'm using a canvas size of 160 by 144. And then I've got this 8x8 pixel grid to guide me in working with things kind of at that tile size. Even with these constraints, my plan is still to do something a bit more detailed than an actual Game Boy game. I think more detail here will give this scene an interesting and gritty look. Also, as you can see, for the first time I've been recording myself actually making pixel art here. I get asked often whether I use a mouse or a tablet to do my work, but the answer obviously here is I actually use my trackpad from my laptop. I've discussed this before, but basically, I just kind of fell into this habit because I like the portability of doing work on my laptop. For example, I'm working and filming this at my kitchen counter today. And so using the trackpad just kind of naturally came along with that idea of working in different spaces all the time. I never felt like using the trackpad was something I was hindered by or needed to learn. And I'm not necessarily recommending it either. I think, whatever you think is comfortable and intuitive for you is probably the best choice. It's interesting though, because I've never actually watched myself work like this. So I guess my stance here is that I've got the right hand doing the pencil movements and selections, but sometimes going off to hit the delete or enter key, or operating the arrow keys for bumping things around. And then the left hand is, ready on that shift key, which I hold to draw straight lines or to nudge selections over. Overall, I feel like it feels kind of like finger painting, and I like that it's just quite a minimal setup. I mean, it's maybe about the most minimal setup you could have. All right, so this is after about the first hour of pixeling, and I'm happy with how it's coming along, but I feel like the layout needs to be a little bit more locked in. I kind of started to stray from that 8x8 grid a little bit just for the sake of convenience. But I think I'm gonna go back through and kind of lock everything into that grid space, and that should bring the HUD up, and I kind of want to move the machines around a little bit just so that maybe I can create a hallway off to the side, or the suggestion of a hallway. And then after, probably make it a little more chaotic, kind of tip some machines over and introduce a character in there. So let's get to it. Now that the layout has been tidied up, I took the opportunity to create some floor tiling, which is a basic design following that 8x8 grid. But then I've gone through to erase some random pixels and give a bit of initial wear to them. I thought the fallen arcade machine would be a tricky thing to figure out, but one of the nice tricks for creating askew objects in a top-down look is to almost just treat them like isometric pixel art. So for this one, I've built the arcade machine out at perfect angles using 2 pixel segments for one edge and 1 pixel segments for the other. Another example of this in this piece is the monitor over by the desk there. Before I forget, I should mention that the palette I'm using here is the one from Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening, which is for the Game Boy, but these colors are the ones you get when you play that cartridge on the Super Nintendo using the Super Game Boy. You can find this palette on low spec, and I've had my eye on it for a while, wanting to try something out with it. The earthy tones here obviously suit the setting of a Zelda game, but I think it repurposes really well for a post-apocalyptic setting like this too. You can get a lot of range out of just 4 colors once you start working them together in different ways. Like here, I've used the 2 lighter tones to create some neon lights running along the wall. Alright, I just wanted to cut in to say, as much as I like the broken arcade machines and stuff like that, it wasn't until I added the neon and the cactus that I was like, oh, we actually got something here. So, so I'm kind of excited now to kind of take it into the final stretch. To make the player character, I started by drawing in a basic framework before bulking it up into a silhouette, and then adding detail into that. Going off the Resident Evil inspiration, I've gone for that sort of vaguely militaristic look, although there's not too much detail to really tell one way or the other for this one. But I think, he seems to be passively inspired by a character like Chris Redfield or something. Over at the pinball machine, I'm making a dude who is, let's just say, taking a nap on the machine. And it was kind of a weird posture to figure out at this size and style. But at the very least, it could be one of those things where it's like a surprise scare if you were walking through the room and they kind of jumped up from the machine or something. I was trying to keep the setting here more atmospheric and less to the graphic or gory side of things, with having a ton of bodies everywhere, stuff like that. I think the best moments in survival horror are just kind of those almost quiet parts where you sort of feel like you're safe, but not at the same time. You always kind of know the game is just waiting to catch you off your guard in some way. For this character HUD and info and stuff, I ended up calling this guy James, and I swear I kind of thought of that like totally independently of myself. And then I was like, oh, that's my middle name. Should I change it just because? But it was already going down, so there he is. Now's kind of the final round of detailing before adding a small touch of animation. My usual way to build up a scene is to look for empty spaces to fill in first, and then once there's no more space, you can go in and find other ways to add extra detailing to spots, like using darker or lighter pixels to apply some grime and weathering, or texture, which is pretty essential for a setting like this. So after the animation work here, it's about 5 o'clock. I started this around 9 a.m. So it's been a full day of work here. Now, granted, I'd estimate at least half of that was, setting up camera work and doing a lot of file management of the video stuff. But it was an interesting experiment to try. You kind of come up with this idea like, oh yeah, it'll be neat to share some video of me making the art. And then that becomes kind of its own project on top of keeping the art going too, But I had fun, and I think it was neat to capture more of these kind of in-the-moment ideas versus the typical post-game analysis kind of thing. So let's go ahead and take a look at the final piece. Here we go. Alright, so I think there's still more that could be done with some of the atmospheric animations, but this is sort of where we're at after the day, For now, it's fulfilled my exploration of this concept, and I suppose there's nothing stopping me from just revisiting this later too. Let's go ahead and finish out with some CRT time though, and keeping in line with the behind the scenes style or whatever, I've recorded just a quick segment about how that works. So to get this on the CRT, I use this HDMI to composite adapter. This I got on Amazon for about $20, And it's pretty easy to use. You just do, this is the HDMI, which plugs into my laptop. So that's the input on the converter. And then the output just goes to the composite cables, which go to the CRT monitor, the TV. And that's about it, really. I guess like it doesn't do anything crazy like the scan lines and whatever. You can kind of add those in, on Photoshop. So thank you for watching, and take care and keep it square.